Welcome to this episode of Wealth Coherence. Is there anything else in terms of parenting with your values when it comes to money that you've experienced that he's like helped you expand in your understanding or your approach?
I would say, so I mentioned in the earlier episode these two teenage girls that I got the chance to work with, and their mom in particular asked me to work with the girls and talk. The next year of topics will be on financial literacy. And when she asked me to do that, part of me thought, who am I to do this? And then I thought, no, I really am excited. I've built this rapport with the girls. It makes sense for me to continue these conversations. We can build on the giving conversations we've had and now have this fuller picture conversation around money.
Money, yeah.
And this is something that, and I've mentioned doing this in other groups of women, and they've all said, that's amazing. I wish I had that growing up. And it's true. It's like,
yeah,
financial literacy is not something we get enough of in school. And it is so family to family independent. There are concepts that we can talk about in school that make sense. I mean, I don't remember what the name of that course was in high school, but it was like, we talked about taxes and what they were, and we needed to do a sample tax return and, things like that. We needed to do a sample budget probably. But of course there's going to be that layer and lens of a family's values and a family's money stories that build onto that. And so I've enjoyed that is an opportunity that I get to have with these girls. I have more books around the house now to prepare for those conversations. I'm looking at more videos and websites online. And so my son came to me recently and said he'd been doing a project with his dad and he was getting like $50 for this. And I said, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. What are you going to do with that? And he said, I'm going to invest it. And guess where he gotten the idea of investing? From one of the books he's been reading. No. He got it from a TV show. He was watching Young Sheldon, and Sheldon
oh my gosh,
invests his money. And so he said, I'm going to invest. So we started talking about investing. And so I think this is one of the great things is that there can be this child-led and parent-led conversation and just sort of allow it to happen whichever way it happens, because if they're interested in it, then they're really going to want to pursue that idea. So we immediately, I said, well, what would you invest in? And he had some ideas, and I said, well, do you want to look them up and see how much a share costs? And, what do you know about these companies? I've been doing my own investing. You and I have both been in an Invest for Better group together. So I've been exploring that. And so I felt like I was more prepared to have this conversation with him. And I think that's the thing is, it's okay to have a beginner's mind, like, especially as women. I don't think we always feel like we are prepared to have this conversation. And if we approach it more from, hey, I'd like to learn more about that too. Where can we find the resources? Like, should we go to the library and ask the librarian? Should we see if there's some videos online? I found, I might have told you this story, but we went to the audience hasn't heard it yet. We went to an arcade recently, and he's really into those arcade grabby machines. And
the
then
ones that come down and they pick up and you grab something and pick it up, and then you get
yes. And he likes to go for the ones where you could get tickets, because then if you get the tickets, then you can buy whatever you want with the tickets. And then he gets super frustrated when he doesn't get anything. And he's like, that's such a waste of money, and this is rigged and whatever. And so I thought, I looked up one of the podcasts I found. It was I think it's an NPR podcast called Million Bazillion. And I was looking for something on investments, thinking while we're driving around, we could learn about investments. Well, it turns out they had an episode where a kid had written in a question about those grabby machines.
Wow,
And so
that's great.
they answered the kid's question. He wanted to know, where does the money go when you put the coin in? And it was actually, it goes into a box. It's not that exciting, but there were some intricate details around how does the machine tell if this is a real coin or not a real coin, and what was so great was we learned about this idea of a compulsion loop and how there's this reward that's out there, and sometimes you can get it and sometimes you're not going to get it, and that's what keeps us coming back to this machine of the, with the grabby thing. It's what keeps us coming back to video games and playing video games over and over again.
Oh yeah, it's like being groomed for the slot machines in
Yes.
Las Vegas or Reno. Yeah, it's just like
Exactly. And so
it's the same thing.
It was really great to have this, sort of side learning, still connected to money, but this side learning. And it was all because of like, hey, let's listen to something together. It wasn't around investment, it was around something else. But I think just coming back to that, beginner's mind, like it's okay. And wouldn't it be good for us to have a little review of the basics from time to time too, even if we already know everything?
Absolutely. And there's always something new to learn. And I think the other thing is, by being a parent that's curious and wanting to do it with your kid, at any age, when you're doing it together, you have that curiosity come forward, you demonstrate what it's like to do that, and then you also can bring discernment. It's like, hey, here's this video on TikTok. Well, who is this person that's doing this? Like, where is this based out of? And like, there was a lot of stuff about all these things about how you can like work the system and do something with insurance and all this stuff, and it was completely inaccurate and was going to be very expensive and a huge tax burden, because I didn't have all the information. So then you also look at how do you vet the source of the information that you're getting?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. We had that great conversation about giving. When you receive all these requests for giving, you don't even know if that organization's real or if it's just a bogus front for taking your money. And it's one of those choosing and being really wise about where you're getting information and where you're giving and where you're spending, right? Like based on our values, I don't want to shop here anymore. I think it's all based on building that ability to make great decisions and have critical thinking and to have it coming from that aligned place within ourselves. And I think that that's so great. Thank you so much for being willing to share a little bit about your journey as a parent with this, because it is not easy. And our kids will just ask. And we didn't even talk about this, but that whole thing about the delayed gratification, there's a lot of research out there about the resilience that builds in a young person for perceived setbacks or having to wait or not having things immediately later in life. And you did your son a huge service by having him wait a little bit. So I just want to commend you for that, because it must not have been easy, because obviously you weren't able to find a set the way you wanted to. But I think just the fact that you went through that and he had to wait and he had to maybe come up with some other solutions on his own, or it's so valuable for character development. And you want to do it when they're as young as possible, because the character development that happens when we're older is much more expensive and more painful. So
yes. I'll just add to that. I think you're highlighting that there are so many lessons that can be learned in having these money conversations, whether it be critical thinking skills around advertising or where we're getting our information, or the this delayed gratification piece, whatever it is. Like, this is all life skills. And, this is what I think my role as a parent is to prepare my son for the real world, for doing this on his own. And that's
what we're up against, right? Because they're using so many tactics to get us to buy things that we don't really need or want.
Yes.
I've gotten to the point now where, like, if I go to the movies, I'm like, oh, they completely designed this in terms of creating a video game around it. Or now they're making videos about video games. Like, movies about, it's like, but just getting it that we're completely inundated all the time with tactics to get our attention, to have us purchase things. And even like the way that things are marketed and the way they look and the size versus the actual quantity, like
Yes.
that critical thinking is huge to develop as young as possible. So
Yeah.
well done.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Love
Thank
having
you.
this
Thanks so much.
conversation with you. Super fun.
Yeah, such a good conversation.